is ill.
Inside. This is no ordinary illness. The boy's true nature, your true nature, fights within him.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Captain Kuba here, and today I decided to tackle a question that I still get to this day. Why does Atreus get sick? This is something that happens to Atreus throughout the game. There's even an image on the Jotunheim mural of a time when Faye used to take care of him during his coughing episodes, which I thought was a cool detail. But still, why does this happen to him? Even though the game gives us an answer, it's not very clear. It's not until we listen to Cory Barlog's explanation that it starts to make some sense. So for those of you who don't know why Atreus gets sick, let's hear it from the man himself.
So the sickness is a manifestation of kind of God puberty happening, right? It is his body trying to almost metamorphose into the next stage, right? But he's resisting it, right?
Because his
dad, his dad's not told him anything, and he's kind of feeling like, is this wrong? Is something wrong with me? He feels like he's broken in some way because this is not something that is just new. He is hearing some of these voices, and he doesn't really understand it, and his dad's not too good at talking about any of that stuff, right? And you know, the manifestation for Atreus, because he's not aware of it, because he's not open to it, just manifests in sickness, right? It manifests in his body just kind of fighting itself, eating itself. It's like a disease inside.
Now, there's a little bit to unpack here, because let's be honest, this is still somewhat confusing, and the reasoning behind it seems very psychological. So the reason Atreus gets sick is because he's not living the life he's supposed to be living. He was born thinking he was immortal, when in reality he's a god. As he begins to experience his godly powers, like being able to communicate with animals and hear the voices of dead people, he begins to experience the symptoms of coughing and eventually passing out. It's not until he learns the truth of what he actually is, a god, that he stops being sick. This psychological view at being a god is something new God of War 4 added to the lore of the series, and that even changes things from the past, like the reason why Kratos is such a rageful person.
So the sickness, so the sickness is a manifestation of that kind of, for Kratos, the manifestation was rage. So the human vessel, the god sort of essence together create this sort of furious tornado, right, inside of him.
Much like Atreus, Kratos also suffered from a sickness due to not knowing he was a god. While Atreus' sickness manifested itself inwardly, Kratos' sickness manifested outwardly in the form of rage. But his case is a little different from Atreus. Unlike his son, he realized he was a god much later in his life. This happened when he demanded his mother to tell him who his father was. By this point in his life, his sickness had become part of who he was, which is why he responded with even more rage after he found out he was a god.
But for Kratos, the rage was almost palpable. Fate had once again pushed him to the brink of madness.
There are other reasons why his rage continued after he became aware of his godhood, but the main reason has to do with the place he grew up, Sparta. Sparta is said to have been one of the toughest places to be born in. It is said that newborns known to have defects would be thrown into the sea, discarded as if they were garbage. The ones that survived were sent to military school to train day and night until they became the killing machines known as Spartan soldiers. Given the circumstances, it's not hard to see why Kratos' sickness continued on into his adult life. While Atreus would have been thrown into the sea without a second thought, Kratos' sickness was seen as a strength to be had and eventually made him the youngest general in the history of Sparta. This makes me think that if Kratos wasn't raised in Sparta, he might have realized he was sick without having to kill an entire pantheon. Imagine for a second he had moved to Athens when he was a kid. We would have seen Kratos the philosopher instead. But anyways, the last time we saw his sickness taking a hold of him was at the end of God of War 3, when he punched Zeus to death. It wasn't until many years after that Kratos realized his sickness needed to be controlled, so he would go into the woods to see if he could resist the temptation of killing dangerous wildlife such as wolves and bears. If he resisted his rage, he would count it as a success. This addition to the lore makes me think that other gods might have experienced different afflictions as well. For example, Zeus. He was rescued by his mother when his father wanted to eat him alive. The responsibility of raising him fell on Gaia, who I imagine at some point had to tell him he was a god. I wonder what Zeus' sickness was before he knew about his godhood. But there you have it, an explanation of the new psychological view at seeing God's sickness. I know lately I've been doing a lot of lore videos, but don't worry, I still got theories to upload for you guys, and now that I'm quarantined at home, I have more time to work on them. But with that said, thank you so much to all of my subscribers and the people who watch my videos. We really got quite the God of War community here. Also, a big thanks goes to all of my members for their monthly contributions to the channel. People like Hidenova, Bassam Al-Kurdi, and Eric Skoll, to name a few, go the extra mile to keep my channel going. So from the bottom of my heart, you have my thanks. If you would like to support the channel, you can become a member by clicking on the blue join button. But anyways, that's gonna be it for today. Don't forget to like and share, and with that said, go forth in the name of Olympus.